Fine Scooby is hiding in the shadows, just waiting for his chance to escape. Suddenly, he hears the sounds of stiletto heels heading his way. He had heard this sound before, and he knew who the sound belonged to, Sonia. Desperate to stay hidden, he moves back into the shadows just in time to see her magnificent form appear right before him. Sonia had her back to Scooby as she took out her walkie-talkie. "This is Agent Sonia over. I have looked all over the first level of the complex and have seen no sign of any intruder over. I am awaiting further orders over." A crackling British voice came over the walkie-talkie. "Hold your position while we check in with the other agents, over." Sonia replied Roger, over and out, and returned her walkie-talkie to her pack. She leaned back and rested her back against the wall behind her. The very wall that Scooby was hiding behind. The large Great Dane just sat there frozen in fear. All she had to do was turn around and walk around the corner, and she would find him. As Scooby sat there, he started to hear a faint buzzing sound. The buzzing began to grow louder. Scooby began to hear it more in his left ear than his right. Suddenly he felt a tingling in his ear as a tiny fly began to fly inside of it. It tickled his ear, and he quickly flipped his head, causing the fly to take off, but it also caused his collar to rattle a little. Scooby Doo immediately froze as he heard Sonia start to walk around. She called out, "Is anyone there?" and then stood quiet listening for a reply. As they both stood there motionless, Scooby suddenly began to hear the buzzing return. This time, he watched the tiny fly flying around right in front of his face. The fly did a couple loop-de-loops before hovering right in front of Scooby's eyes. It appeared to be facing Scooby, and for a moment he believed the tiny fly was looking right into his eyes. The fly finally came to a landing on the bridge of Scooby's nose. Scooby just looked cross-eyed at the fly as he watched it begin to walk down his nose, heading away from his eyes. The fly finally stopped when it reached the top of Scooby's nose, then turned around and looked back right into the large dog's eyes. As tiny as the fly was, Scooby could make out a menacing expression on its face. Scooby just looked back at the fly and gently shook his head, as if to say, "Please don't." The tiny fly then disappeared from Scooby's view, as he could feel it walk down the front of his large black nose. Scooby then felt a slight tickle as the fly was right at the brink of one of his large nostrils. A wave of fear crashed over Scooby as he felt the fly crawl into his nose. As the tiny fly made its way deeper into Scooby's left nostril, it would occasionally flap its wings, but it would do it so quickly that it made the whole inside of Scooby's nose vibrate. The tickle was so intense that it caused Scooby's eyes to begin to tear up. His nostrils flared and soon his nose began to run. It tickled so bad that Scooby began to feel as though he was going to sneeze. He thought to himself, "A sneeze? No, not a sneeze, not now, it will give me away." He bit down hard and squeezed his eyes shut. He felt sneezy tears run down his cheeks. Scooby could feel his nose running as mucus oozed from his nostrils. Scooby sniffed, causing a slight gurgling sound in his nostrils. This caused the fly to take flight inside his nose. The fly's wings tickled at the soft pink walls of Scooby's nostril, causing his need to sneeze to become unbearable. Scooby felt his lower jaw go slack as his chest began to expand, as his building sneeze became audible, rah, rah, rah. Scooby quickly stuck his plump index finger under his large nose, just in time to fend off his growing sneeze. He let out a sigh of relief when he suddenly heard Sonia's voice from the other side of the wall. "It sounds like someone has to sneeze." Right then the fly noticed that its exit was cut off, and it began to panic. It began to flap its wings wildly, causing the intense tickle deep inside Scooby's nose to grow worse. His eyes bulged from his head as tears streamed down his face. His nostrils flared wildly as a powerful sneeze built. Scooby could feel his finger began to slip away from under his nose. His poor nose could take no more. It started slowly but built up fast. Rah, rah, yee. Yeah, right. Then Sonia walked around the wall only to catch Scooby in the act of a most powerful sneeze. Sneeze. The fly shoot from Scooby's nose like a bullet as it impacted into Sonia's cheek. It slipped off of her face and landed in a puddle on Sonia's cleavage. Sonia slowly opened her eyes as she wiped the spray off of her face. She looked at the large Great Dane as he sat there with a goofy post-sneeze expression written all over his face. Gazentight Scooby Doo, do you supply towels with your showers?